no such thing to actually I will complete and I will come to my life again. So what you are planning to service them to finish everything by 2 months. Then so that we can get some time. But a week off. Then some time to go to it. Then we are planning to go. The time is available. By 3:30, night night you are catching free. But by 8:20, by 9 o'clock. Bathroom out just. Rajma. Finally, Rajma. Rima, Mama, Rajma. Yeah, Rajma. That is USP and transportation. Okay. I will help you. I will help. The online. They chance for transportation in the US, only I send only the actual. But that has a fixed amount, but for these, there is no fixed amount. Better, okay. Venu, what is it? That is a natural. Venu, now photo will tell that. Something meaning is hospital. Okay, I said, much good for that. I good for that. So I good for the one. Goodbye. ಸಾಯಂಕಾಲ ಸಾಯಂಕಾಲ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಉಂಟವ
A very warm good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to our session. This happens to be our first session for today after the industrial meet. So, it is my pleasure to introduce Professor R. Ramesh, Principal of MVGR College of Engineering. Sir holds a PhD from National University of Singapore and was a permanent resident of Singapore, later which he has come to India and then started taking up his career as an academician. Sir also has a manufacturing experience. Sir is a hardcore mechanical engineer with interests in intelligent manufacturing systems, Internet of Things, leadership and change management, engineering ethics, etc. There's a lot, but in a nutshell, to tell, with over 30 years of experience, he is one man with a culmination of experience from academia and industry. He has got extramural funding close to 2 crore rupees and then has published papers in journals of international repute with high impact factor. He also has a patent to his credit, and he is one of the members of the Project Monitoring Review Committee by Department of Science and Technology, and is also an external supervisor for Griffith Business School, Australia. He is a fellow of Institution of Engineers and a senior IEEE member. He has guided many master thesis and also doctoral students, and he is known in India and abroad for his research. Um, Sir mostly try is very the point why we bought him for an artificial intelligence workshop was that a lot of times a lot of things technology can do, but there are a very few things which only humans do. That is the toughest part, that is motivating ourselves and motivating our team and trying to work with a vision mission. So this is something which Sir does, because of which his profile stands apart. He started off as a professor and then he took up as a head of the department, then was rose to the cadre of dean of research, and then today he's the principal. So, what all sometimes when speakers talk, we feel that everything is very euphoric. It's very good to hear, but how do I try to apply it on my ground? So, that is where his expertise lies in. I hope that you make most of this opportunity. And thank you, sir, for accepting our invitation. I would now like to request Dr. Ritu Maiti to welcome sir with a bouquet of flowers. Thank you, madam.
Thank you.
And yeah, just wanted to add for your uh, information or masala, whatever you take it from me, all as always. Sir knows 5 languages, 6 languages, and sir is a playback singer, has been into playback singing, and sir is a black belt in taekwondo, and sir is an international referee. Sir has one patent, and that is all I could remember. But there are a lot more. He plays more instruments also. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Little exaggerated. It's not as that. So, very good afternoon to everybody. And at the outset, sitting in the afternoon for a lecture session is probably the toughest challenge for a human being. I promise to make it as interesting as possible. Luckily, the subject matter is also such. So, good opportunity for me to be here. I thank Dr. Ritumaiti and the CTTC team for inviting me. I didn't know what to expect, so I have a lot here, but you can tone it down. The title is a little interesting. Four English words, which basically sum up on the one side what we are, and on the other side what I hope we would be. So that's why this is like what they do in the what do you call that, the CAT GRE English sessions. A and B is to C and D. So how do you map that? So mostly we are stuck on the left half with etymology and excruciation. Why do I say that? We're stuck with etymology, the signs of words. We do a lot of word jugglery. We talk of IoT, we talk of AI, and now we've got plenty of words. Generative AI, and we call it augmented reality, virtual reality. Huge barrage of words, etymology. And then we get into beating it out. Now somebody says this is this, and somebody else says no, that's not it. Something else is it. So that's where we're stuck, and that by definition leads to excruciation. We go through a lot of excruciation. Is like a lot of pain when you try to slice and dice words and break it up. There's a lot of pain involved in it. And that basically sums up what we do. I do it all the every day in the college. That's what we do. That's what we're supposed to be doing. That's what we in the education system, or that's what we in business or in the industry is supposed to be doing. Play around with words and get ourselves into a lot of trouble. So what I would like to do through this rather short session is to expect some transformation is too big, but at least just to give a flavor of what that would be. From etymology, can we move to epiphany? Epiphany is like, oh, I got a realization today. It's like that, eureka time. Okay? So suddenly I'm playing around with words and now I'm facing an epiphany situation. This is a breakthrough for me. And what that would lead to is from an excruciating situation to some ecstasy that we can hopefully carry on from here. So that's basically the title. So a quick capture of what I would like to do through this session. Basically, I want to present a kaleidoscopic view. I'm just trying to bring here, there's a lot of content here, which don't worry about the content, sit back, relax. This is an afternoon session. This is not meant to be an academic brainstorming session. It's meant to be a thought-provoking self-introspective sessions based on some things that I would like to show here, a kaleidoscopic view. I would need a sound cable which can, because I have a few videos here, so that it's important to capture the sound. If the sound is poor, then okay. So a kaleidoscopic view of a lot of life lessons and scenarios. A topic that I have been given is on this. So that hopefully we can use this as a launch pad to try to see what we can do further on. The outline of a few quick things that I would like to share. We'll start with from this whole concept of mass to lean. It's a standard manufacturing engineering concept, but I would like to bring that here. Are people here? I don't have a clue of who's who. All of you are from what domain? Are you from the engineering side? If so, which particular side? Computer science, okay. Mechanical, I would like to know who's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Good. Okay. So you'll gel with me. I'm a mechanical engineer through. So anyway, but all engineers. Good. So this mass to lean is something which we know in engineering very much. I'm not too sure the computer science domain appreciates that, but very important lesson to learn from there. And then we'll talk about the goal, and then a few lessons on. Very quick short story. The US had the big three in automobile engineering way back in the 1950s, GM, Ford, and Chrysler. They were called the big three in the auto industry. And as you know, Ford was the world leader in the auto industry in the 1920s. And the Ford River Rouge plant is a very huge manufacturing setup that used to make 7,000 automobiles a day in those days. Started in 1917, ended by 1928. 160 kilometer of interior railroad track, 93 buildings, a very massive River Rouge plant. So that was the heyday of the US auto industry when Ford was leading the show. As I said, making 7,000 automobiles a day. The world leader, along with the other two called the big three, GM and Chrysler. Enter the Dragon, Toyota. Very small company at the time, started in 1937. And in 1950, when they suddenly had a dream. And I keep saying this in my college regularly. I dream big. because my strength comes from Abdul Kalam. He wrote that book, feel free to dream big. So they had a dream similar. They said, Toyota wants to be the world leader in automobile. That's an absolutely ridiculous dream by all means, because you're looking at Ford, which is manufacturing 7,000 automobiles a day versus what Toyota was doing in 13 years. They made 2,685 vehicles. There's no comparison. It's like Langada saying, I want to be the Olympic 100-meter champion. You're not going to get anywhere. Added to that, it was just right after the Second World War. So the Japanese economy was completely smashed. Very tiny domestic market. The market itself had a huge variant demand. Somebody wants small cars, somebody wants big cars, and all kinds of things. A very strong union. Unlike in the Ford company, where they could have one guy do the same job over and over again, the Japanese union would not agree to that. No money, biggest problem, and many competitors, because everybody wanted to enter the Japanese market now that it's under US monitoring. So to eat up whatever little Toyota could do. So that was the scenario for Toyota. And that is when IG Toyota, the chairman at that time, along with Taichi Ono, who was his engineer, they went to Ford to look at this Rouge River plant and see what do we learn from Ford Motor Corporation, and then we'll build that here in Japan. Went across every nook and corner of the plant, talked to the people, and then they realized that we can't do anything, because what Ford is doing there cannot be replicated in Japan for obvious reasons. They had huge stamping machines which would just mass produce sheet metal and so on. What can these people do? They don't have money. They don't have government, which is already under tight control. They have a market which is highly fragmented, and they have competitors. So very, very tough challenge. And imagine for a company of that type still wanting to be. So I'll be saying a lot of things here. What I would request you to do is to look at that, not just from a perspective of what Ford did or what Toyota did. All of us face the same situation. We may not be as glamorous as Ford or as Toyota today, but this is basically where we are. This talks a lot about what we are and what we could do. So if you look at your own self, it's exactly the same situation. Here I am, a tiny man, and I'm trying to conquer the world. Next to impossible. But the impossible has become possible. Ford is nowhere there today. The big three is not there. GM, Chrysler, they're nowhere in the market. Toyota is the world leader. A lot of years, of course, it doesn't matter. Rome was not built in a day. But then it didn't happen. But from the etymology to the epiphany, or from the excruciation to the ecstasy, is a very, very committed, dedicated journey, fraught with all kinds of difficulties, hurdles, sometimes thinking that nothing is ever going to happen here. But if we take a scientific approach, it does happen. So very simple idea what they came up with. Profit is cost plus, the price that you sell your product is cost plus profit. That is standard. And what do people do if I want to increase the profit margin? Increase the selling price. Very simple. But then that was where the problem was with Toyota. They can't increase the selling price because they don't have much of a market. So their price has to be fixed. But how do I increase my profit? The only way is to reduce cost. So that is when they had to move from the mass manufacturing model to the lean model. Very crucial, beautiful lessons, life lessons coming from technology here. How do we implement the lean model? So they had to go through the systems thinking, the Japanese, samurai dojo method, work with mental models, house of lean, a lot of things here, which they captured in the form of what is called as the house of lean. So that is the model where stability and standardization form the base. Customer or the goal of the customer focus is the roof of the house, and the pillars are just in time and capturing, eliminating all kinds of errors. And the core that builds the whole thing is active involvement of all members of the organization. So all of us here individually, we have our own targets. We work in a community or a group of with a group of people. So it's always not just me alone, but it's also a lot of other people, and probably some of us are leading our own teams or hoping to lead teams or lead organizations. And then how do we get this whole thing moving? So a quick capture here of what is the mass mentality. You will look at each one of these things very much in tune with what we are. Move the metal. That's what we do. We move metal. Metal happens to be, in our case, every day. Move the day. Today is gone. Tomorrow is another day. Day after is another day. Or, I'm doing the training program as with CTTC. Move the metal. You get a bunch of people coming in. Move them out. Or like I do in the college, you have every year 1,200 students getting admitted. Move the metal. The whole mentality is push out. Get something, throw it out in the market. What happens to the market? I don't care. Big batches, get them in big batches, move them slowly across. So there's a lot of queue goes on. And the whole leadership model is thou shalt. I'm the boss, you do as I say. Standards are there in the book. We don't care what it is. There's big books, nobody reads it. That's the standard, you're supposed to follow it. Okay, nothing is visible. Standards are fixed. The definition of a standard is it's fixed. You can't change it. Okay. And it's developed by somebody, we don't know who. Very important thing, don't get caught holding the bag. When you are in a mass production system, get the thing out of your hand. Problem is somebody else. I'm training a batch of students, get them out from here. When he was with me, he was good. But then he went to Ritu ma'am and then got spoiled. Sorry, can't help it. Not my problem. So don't get caught holding the bag. If there's a troublesome guy, throw him out. Put him on somebody else's head. Only grunts go to the shop floor. I don't know what's happening on the ground. If somebody has a complaint, then I go to the ground and just keep do. So this is what is the mass mentality started in mass manufacturing. Manufacturing had to go a long way, but unfortunately, society is still stuck here. We are still very, very much, in the grips of this mass mentality. In stark contrast is the lean mentality. Stop, very interesting paradigm. Stop production so production does not stop. It seems paradoxical that you will say stop some. In other words, you have a problem, stop. Look at it, understand it, get that cleaned up, and then move forward. There's no point in just keep moving on. Where are you moving on to? Tool system, do only what is needed. Let the market demand it. When the market asks for it, you make it. So you don't have to stock it up. You don't have to make everything, keep it there. Nobody is buying. Make one at a time. It seems very interesting. Very lucrative that if I group up a bunch of things and process it together, setup is done. एक बात में काम हो जाएगा. Not necessarily. Do one at a time. You produce better quality. You get better into the market. The leader is more an influencer, not just dictator. So you're saying like, what do you think? How do we do this together? Simple visual standards. Don't make standards written somewhere in the book. Put up a photograph of how this room should be. So everybody knows when you see the room, yeah, it's in order. Chairs are all astray, then it's not. So the standard is a very simple visual tool, not a big book. And very interesting, standards are changing. You call something as a standard and then you say it changes. How does it happen like that? Because standards are standards today based on the way we understand what it is. Tomorrow our understanding changes, so you have to change your standard unless it's an absolute standard. Absolute standards don't change. But all of these standards are written by or prepared by somebody who has limited understanding and influence as of that time. So over time it changes. Make problems visible. Madam runs an organization. Make problems visible. Don't hide the problem. The more you hide it looks like if I hide the problem, it's easy. It's a little hard, but make the problems visible. The problems will not be there in due time. See for yourself. Don't sit in your chair and pass decisions. Go look in lean manufacturing. They call this Gimba. Go to the shop floor. Look at what is happening. Learn a very different story. Plan, do, check, act. Not just do. You plan something, do it, check where it is going, and then you act. So some very, very interesting lessons that we could pick up from lean manufacturing, which is directly applicable to what we do, the way we think, and the way we operate in our day-to-day situation. It's not just lean manufacturing out there. In fact, I have been very much influenced by this, looking at how do we implement lean manufacturing in education. Because we have this very strong mass mentality in education. The education sector needs to move into lean manufacturing. And one of those very fundamental things there is stability. Identify where waste is getting generated. Eliminate waste. The whole idea of lean, you have a fat body. The first thing you do is cut out the extra fat. Cut out the waste. Then you have a lean setup. That's a big story. Jidoka means, how do I do error proofing? We'll not get into that, then the whole topic will be only on lean manufacturing. That's for you to do homework if you want. But they are the two pillars. Just in time and Jidoka are the two pillars which sustain the customer focus. But these principles are very interesting to note. The opposite of what we do in practice. You'll look at each one of these. Very rare that we will be following any of this. So that is about lean manufacturing. One step ahead is this, the topic on the goal. That's the latest paradigm that is moving on in industry, called the theory of constraints. Ilya Goldratt is the pioneer for this. Very, very beautiful book, The Goal. I seldom read too many books, but this is one book that I couldn't put it down. From the time I got the book, it's so engrossing. It's written like a novel. The more you read it, the more it keeps pulling you. Written by Ilya Goldratt, the concept of theory of constraints. So it's trying to look at a step further from what is lean manufacturing. So very interestingly, as we go on with whatever we are doing, we don't define this. What is the goal? That's what the book starts with. The scenario that the book presents is there is a factory, and the manager of the factory is given 3 months' time to do some magic or shut down, because the plant, despite running continuously, is facing severe losses, and there's no way that we can continue running that plant. It has to be closed. And you've got 3 months to do whatever or close it. And then the head of the plant is faced with the situation. What do I do? And I'm running. We even created a robotic system for the machines to run. The key machine is running continuously. Everything is going well. But why am I producing loss? Despite, running all the time. And then he goes and meets somebody, and that somebody doesn't give an answer, but he urges him to look at what is your goal. So obviously the goal is to keep the plant running. Looks a very, very small, simple statement. What is the goal? But a lot of work behind in fixing what that is. What am I supposed to be doing? What is making this place work are questions that need to be asked. And by definition, the goal is one single goal. The goal is not too many things. So they were forced to ask this question for themselves: what is the goal of running this plant? Many answers came. Obviously, I have to make production. I have to, machines have been purchased. They have to be kept busy. People are employed. They have to be kept busy. There's so many things coming up. But they were forced to ask this question again and again. Is that the goal? Are you sure that is the goal? And the answer was something very, very interesting, that none of these was the goal, which he highlights in that. So rather than let out the secret, you can read through that, what the goal was. And based on that, they came up with these 3 core measures. That the goal is not what we think it is. Many times we think that the goal is, I've got a batch of students, I have to send them out, that's the goal. Looks very obvious. Please don't be fooled by the simplicity of that, somebody like Ilya Goldratt has to come up with this theory of constraints. Have a theory of constraints institute. It's not going to be obviously something that is, so trivial. It requires a lot of introspection to figure out what really is the goal. So in their case, the goal they did identify was, the goal is very simply to make money, not to keep your key machine running, not to keep your employees engaged, not to make sure that you're doing production. The goal is simply, goal of that organization, as with all of our cases, is simply to make money. Now, if the goal is to make money, you have to look at every single thing and see whether that is in pursuit of that goal. If it is, it's meaningful. If it is not in pursuit of the goal, you're wasting your time. So this whole idea that came, so they had 3 core measures. Now to define, if the goal is to make money, then what would be the 2 measures that I would have to look at? One is throughput, not how many I am producing. What is the throughput from my plant in terms of what is coming out and how is it getting used? What is my investment? How much is the inventory or amount that is stuck? Because remember, it's money. What is throughput? That gets me money. What is inventory? Already spent money. And what is my operating expense? So that will tell me on a global scale whether I'm really making money or losing money. If you look at the accounting guy who looks at only production, he will say you are making money. But that's not the only thing. The company has so many other things happening, and if all of that is not in sync, you're probably losing money. So they came up with these with these three things, and then a lot more detail we'll learn. So they had these 5 focusing steps. They identified that the goal is achieved not by running your key machine, which is what we generally believe. There are some key machines because very expensive machine, and that has to be run. Buy a 20 crore machine and keep it idle doesn't justify anything. So running the key machine seems to be our goal. Not so. The goal is achieved by identifying constraints. So that is the theory of constraints idea. You look at your scenario, whether it's a manufacturing scenario or whatever life scenario, define your goal, look at the constraints, because the constraint is what is preventing you from achieving the goal. Very interesting. Look at your constraint. It could be a mentality constraint, it could be a financial constraint, it could be a facility constraint, it could be an operational constraint, whatever may be your constraint. In a production line, it's a simple thing because we only deal with machines, but defining goals for us as human beings is a little more complicated because there's so many other constraints. Identify that key constraint. There are many constraints, but there's one constraint which is really your bottleneck. Exploit that constraint. In a sense, work on that constraint, make sure that that is not a constraint anymore. Once you have done that, synchronize everything to match with that constraint. Now that that constraint has been eliminated, make sure that your whatever is your production or your activities are moving in sync with that constraint. Evaluate the performance of that constraint, repeat the process, because now something else becomes a constraint. It's not that one constraint over, life is cool. Some other constraint comes up. Now you do the same process. Identify the constraint, exploit it, make sure that everything is in sync now with that, and keep moving. So this was in brief the idea of theory of constraints, which so put together this whole idea of lean manufacturing and the theory of constraints gives us some very, very valuable insights into what and how we would need to rethink where we are and where we go ahead. So we'll not skip, we'll skip through all this. So probably at the end of that small clip, this is a small exercise that you could do. Given these two concepts that we have now in brief got a fleeting idea, what would you define as your goal? And what do you think are constraints that are preventing you from reaching that goal? And how would you look at the concept of lean? I haven't covered that. It's very, very quickly run through. The concept of lean as in eliminating waste, just to pick on that for a start. How would you look at that? And how would you look at identifying those 3 parameters in that case, which will help you achieve the goal? So this would be a good exercise, self-introspection. There'll be many of these exercises. I didn't put that here. The rest will be flashed here. So there's a lot of work for you to do. You can stop in between for a few minutes to see, to let you to do that work than ramble on this way. So you may want to note down these questions, which for this case are not there. What would you define as your goal? What would you say are constraints or the biggest constraint right now for you that is blocking you from getting to that goal? And what steps would you like to take, which could even be just like, okay, one of the steps I'll take is let me just get that book on the goal and read it. Good enough. So a couple of things that you could, what I would want to do through this exercise is not just run through a bunch of slides, bore you to death, and okay, they invited me, I got my view and I walk off. And at the end of the day, nobody gets anything. Even if we can get a few things that really make a big difference to us, that would be really worth the time and effort that we spend. So that was that part. So now we move on to the next. Once again, I'll keep repeating this a few times. Don't be bamboozled by the number of topics that keep coming up. They will look very, distinct. Suddenly he talks about lean, then he talks about goal, then he talks about leadership, then something else. Relax. Fasten your seatbelt. This is a relaxation session. Getting it all together, trying to find that link. Don't worry about it. See what you can pick up here and there, because my whole idea here is to present a kaleidoscopic view. I am not going into detail. It's only to get a flavor. So then you can, it's like one of those 5-star buffet lunches. You go around, you see so many variables. ये सब कब खाएंगे? ये सब खाने के लिए नहीं है, देखने के लिए है. You look at it and then you see, okay, today I pick this, tomorrow I pick that, and hopefully every day it's free. Then you can keep picking. But that's the idea here. Otherwise, you will get lost in this because क्या बोलता रहता है, कभी कुछ बोल रहे हैं, कभी कुछ और बोल रहा है. How does it all connect? It may not necessarily connect, but it does connect on one point, that is just to give you a multi-dimensional flavor. And there's many dimensions here. That's the point I want to bring across. There's too many dimensions of issues that you need to look at. It definitely calls for your attention, if not now, in future, because there's lots of things that we can learn from that. So the main topic here, which we will be continuing on, is how do we become better leaders? We all are leaders in our own right. You may lead one person, you may lead 20, you may lead a whole country. PM Modi is here in Bhubaneswar today. Doesn't matter how many you need, whether you need one or you need a million, the job is the same. The effort required for the one and the million is the same. We don't believe that. We think that million requires some other effort. There is only one effort, and the effort is the same for both. So we're looking at that. So how do we define leadership? Key underlying points here. Leadership involves relationship. Very critical term. Without relationship, you can't have much of a leadership. Obviously, relationship means with fellow people. And who are those fellow people? People who have a common purpose. There's a shared, you can lead a team only when they have a common purpose. If everybody has different ideas, then that's not a team you can lead, because it's not a team itself. So there's a shared purpose, and people want to make change. क्या करें, ये तो मैम के अंडर डाल दिए 20 लोग, अभी क्या करें, करना ही है. You can't have much of a, there has to be that feeling that we want to together make a difference. Then you have a leadership situation. And what would it require to be a leader? You'll have to have the intent to lead. Of course, some personal responsibility, take that. Work on change. There has to be a shared purpose. There'll be a bunch of followers that you'll have to direct. You have to have influence over them. So many different things. So we'll not ramble on that. Why do we need good leadership? So just quickly and briefly define what is leadership. Why do we need good leadership? This is critical. I'll show you a small video on that. But we generally don't think much about it. We think that it's okay, except when you have very bad leaders. Then we think, yeah, take me. We had that situation in our state, Andhra Pradesh, in the last few years. Terrible leadership, because of which it's been whatever it is. So at those times, you may begin to think that, no, maybe it would have been good to have something better. But other than that, we don't bother really. Good leadership, bad leadership, doesn't matter. But it really does matter. And a classic case is this Enron scandal. Enron was a big energy company way back in the 1980s. And this man, Jeffrey Skilling, was then CEO of Enron Corporation. Very interesting. The CEO of Enron Corporation, indicted on 35 counts of crime and financial fraud, found guilty, sentenced to 14 years in prison. Arthur Andersen, everybody knows, very big leading auditing company. Arthur Andersen was the auditor for Enron Corporation. They got into serious trouble thanks to Enron, not thanks to Enron, because of what poor auditing they did for Enron. And Kenneth Lay, of course, was the president of the company. Now, this guy is not a small guy. A PhD from, MBA from Harvard, top of his class, top 5% from, getting into Harvard Business School itself is very tough. And being in the top 5 there is really, became consultant at McKinsey and the chairman of Enron Gas Company, promoted to CEO. So this fellow is not like one of those, local, जो 2 नंबर का काम करते हैं, 10 रुपया उधर ले लिया, 20 रुपया उधर, not those kind of guys. Big time guy doing big time trouble. Okay. So we'll quickly just look at this small video.
As an energy supply company dealing with natural gas. Eventually, the company will come to trade the weather. The stock price kept growing year on year. It goes through a flood the founder of the company, Kenneth Lay, but something was wrong within the company, came through the Valhalla scandal of 1987. Two oil traders working for Enron gambled enormously on the company's behalf, shifting money to fake accounts with names such as NY Arts or My Arts. Worried auditors told Lay that they found the two traders moving money into their own accounts, manipulating earnings, and gambling on trades beyond their capacity. But instead of firing the two rogue traders, Lay made no changes. It didn't seem to matter what they were doing, as long as they were making the company money. Enron even sent them a letter saying, "Please keep making us billions." Later, the people convicted of fraud. Ken Lay acted shocked, saying that he was not aware of the reckless gambling and theft. As revealed later, he actually encouraged it. One of the convicted traders was sent to jail for a year, and this gave Ken Lay a big problem. One of his main moneymakers was behind bars, and he needed someone new to bring in cash. Enter Jeffrey Skilling. Skilling, Enron's new CEO, was Lay's biggest asset. When he arrived at Enron, he started moving the company in a new direction. Skilling wanted to turn Enron from a gas supply company into a stock market for natural gas. He also introduced the company to mark-to-market accounting, an idea that would allow the company to fraudulently reap billions. So mark-to-market accounting simply allows the company to write down profits in their books on the day that the deal was signed. This meant that if Enron signed a deal worth $50 million over the next 10 years, they could write $50 million in their books that day, despite not receiving a penny. It didn't even matter if the deal fell through. Effectively, this meant that the company was worth more on paper than it had actually earned. Meanwhile, Skilling was known for his Darwinian philosophy, survival of the fittest. His favorite book, The Selfless Gene, describes how greed and competition motivate human nature. At Enron, Skilling wanted to unlock these instincts in his employees. One way he did this was grading all employees on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being the best and 5 being the worst. The thing was, 10% of all employees had to be graded a 5, and when you were graded a 5, you were fired. This created the competition that Skilling was looking for. People began to work 18 hours a day and were ruthless in their efforts to earn the company as much money as possible. Skilling famously said that money was the only thing that motivated people. Enron merged with Pacific Gas and Electric, which gave them access to the Californian grid. Once this was achieved, strange things began to happen. In the newly deregulated electricity market of California, rolling blackouts became common. But strangely, the state had almost double the capacity than there was demand. So why was this happening? It turns out Enron traders were manipulating the market. They moved electricity out of state to increase demand, and when the price got high enough, they would move it back in. They even called power plants and asked them to make excuses to shut down for a few hours, increasing the price as there was less demand. Traders had energy maps and the control to move the energy. They knew exactly how to squeeze every last dollar from the people of California. The year-long ordeal would cost California $30 billion. One day in 2001, out of the blue, Skilling suddenly resigned. Perhaps he figured he could leave the company years before it imploded. Then he could say, well, it was fine when I left it. Regardless, Kenneth Lay took over the CEO role. Just one day later, Sharon Watkins, who worked under the company CFO, Andrew Foster, sent a letter to Kenneth Lay detailing the staggering amount of corruption and fraud that she found within the company. The Wall Street Journal would write a piece about some of Andy's dealings, and soon the SEC would launch an informal inquiry. At this point, investors began to feel nervous. Kenneth Lay tried to bring calm and reassurance to investors and employees. While he was addressing the company's issue to a speech to employees, just several blocks away, Enron's accounting firm was busy shredding documents. One of the accounting firms shredded 1 ton of paper on October the 23rd, but it was too late. The walls began to fall, and over the course of a month, the company went from that healthy appearance of one of the leading innovators to total bankruptcy.
You want us to believe that you sat there in your office and had no clue that this place was about to collapse. On the day I left, on August 14th, 2001, I believe the company was in strong financial condition. I did not. do anything wrong. That was not in the interest. All the time I worked for a corporation, it was in the interest of shareholders of the company. If I could go back and redo things, I would not.
For the thousands of people who held Enron stock, the market was frozen at the $32 mark, and when it reopened, it was $9 a share. Meanwhile, Enron executives had a fire sale of all of their stock. In the months leading up to the bankruptcy, Skinner told his employees to buy more stock while he sold all of his. As the media began circling the story, criminal investigations were launched. Cliff Baxter, a trader who often went on Skinner's wild adventures, cashed in $30 million from Enron. After being called to testify in court, Baxter got in his Mercedes, drove down Quiet Street, and shot himself. Andy Fostow, the former CFO, pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit wire fraud. He ratted out and cut himself a deal to testify against other Enron executives. He was sentenced to 10 years but only served 6 and paid $23 million in fines. Enron's accounting firm, Arthur Anderson, the one that shredded 1 ton of paper, was convicted of obstructing justice. America's oldest accounting firm collapsed due to the loss of reputation. 29,000 people lost their jobs. Ken Lay earned $300 million from Enron. He was found guilty of 10 counts of securities fraud and was facing 45 years in prison, but died of a heart attack a month before his sentencing. 20,000 people at Enron lost their jobs and medical insurance, with an average severance pay of only $4,500. Executives were paid $55 million during the bankruptcy and cashed a further $774 million in the year before the collapse. Skilling, the mastermind behind Enron, was convicted of 19 counts of security and wire fraud. He was sentenced to 24 years and $180 million in fines. While in jail, his parents and his son passed away. He only served 12 years of his 24-year sentence and was released in early 2019.
Very big story in brief, but poses some very interesting questions. Why do people like Skilling take to such means? Again, this is for our own assessment. Why do they take to such means, even though coming from such highly educated background? Second, if you were in Ken Lay's position, what would you do to check Skilling? Remember, the whole purpose of this session is to do a self-introspection to see what it is or where it is that we need to harness our source of strength, because these are situations we will face. All of us face this. It may not be in the scale of Enron in terms of millions of dollars, but every one of us, anybody who works for any organization, faces all of these kind of situations, big or small, which really call upon a different ideology, a different thought process that we need to bring to bear. So if you were having to overlook something like this, what would you do? Or if you were heading Arthur Anderson, that was the audit company, and saw that something of this order was happening in your firm, what would be your response? Again, questions to note. So these are questions for you, which you can maybe briefly make a note, answer them at your convenience, but at least. So the very powerful example of this Enron scandal. In fact, post the Enron scandal, the US brought in the Sarbanes-Oxley Act exclusively to target these kind of financial fraud systems. So people are very interesting in their and innovative in their thought process, that they can come up with such ingenious ways of conning the people, mark-to-market accounting and so on. So that's one lesson. So very important for us as leaders to understand that we work in a society or in a situation where there's new realities coming up every day. You can't go with a one track thought process that, okay, I've been working like this all these years and I'll continue like that. Every day we face new realities. Now with your AI and generative AI, there's a whole slew of new realities that come in. Nobody ever writes emails anymore. Everything is ChatGPT. Nobody writes thesis anymore. Everything is ChatGPT. Nobody makes videos anymore. Generative AI. So do you really, as a faculty member, give them credit for what do you know from the language that they write, that it is not written by them? They cannot write that kind of English. They just can't. It's not in their gene to write it. But then that's the mail or the letter that you get. So what do you do? So that's the reality, and you are in that leadership position to try to see what you have to do as a teacher or as a parent. So we can't excuse ourselves, or like the judges have this option, I can recuse from this case. You can't recuse yourself from this case. You are part of it. It depends on who and how many that you deal with, but you are part of it. And what do we do? Because the complexities are too many. Okay, so we need a paradigm shift. The old paradigm of the leader was what is there on the left hand side, and the new paradigm is what it is that is needed. Or rather, leadership always meant this. The other one was what was called management. Okay, so we'll see that also. So the old paradigm was that no, leader has to bring stability in the organization. You have to be in control of the situation. You have to, be competitive. You should not have much diversity. Make sure that there's a lot of everything is in conformance. All are on one page, and you have to come across as the hero in your organization. Whereas the new paradigm of a leader is very different. You are not looking at trying to stabilize things. You are looking at managing change, because the only constant thing in the world is change. Another very interesting statement. The only constant thing is change. Right? So your job is to manage change, not bring stability. Your job is to facilitate organization development, not control. Your job is to collaborate with people and get people to collaborate with themselves, rather than trying to get people to compete. I heard an interview of Jack Ma. Everybody knows Jack Ma, and he tried to apply to Harvard for a business degree many times over and was always rejected. So he couldn't even make it to Harvard, poor fellow. But then he said, I have been so successful because I got a lot of intelligent guys to work for me, and I knew how to make them work together. And that is very tough. You can have a bunch of people that listen to you, that's fine. But when you have 4 intelligent people, no 2 of them are going to agree on anything between them. So how do you get these 4 people to work together? That was his talent. So he could make that happen, and that's what brought him what he was. Diversity encourager. So a leader has to deal with diversity. Nowadays, there's a lot of clamor all coming from the US, but in India also there has to be X number of people, women employed in organization, women in leadership. It's not just is there leadership, but it is more like it has to be there. So there's the very latest news that came up. Lieutenant General Rajiv Puri writing to the Chief of Army Staff that there's 108 women who are now in commanding officer positions in the army or in the armed forces, I think army. Out of them, 8 were reviewed, and he had a big list of 8 different points to say about these women leaders and how they're unfit for the job. And that was a letter he wrote, which somehow became public, saying that these were the problem. Big furor on that. No, how can you have gender discrimination? Who's talking of gender discrimination? He is the commanding officer of that unit, and he's done his review on 8 COs and found 8 of them lacking, and that was reported. Now, why is a section of people looking at it as gender discrimination? It is true for what if those 8 people were to be men? Would that letter have come out in the open? Would that have been a furor? No, you just take it in the straight. But because those 8 happen to be women, now nobody in the army cares, men or women. You have to command, and when you have to command, you have to command. It doesn't matter what gender you are. Are you up to the game as a commander? Is what the whole issue is, and that is what his letter was talking about. So more and more these things are becoming politicized rather than the way things are. But there is no way getting around the fact that diversity is there to stay. There are more and more women coming. There are more and more capable women. And capability is what matters. And they come with diverse thought processes, diverse mindsets. Good for us, we deal with only one kind of population, but across in the world, you have multilingual, multicultural. In Japan, the way you deal with people, you have to be very sensitive about cultural styles when you deal with them. In some countries, you try the American approach, shake hand, pat him on the back, it's treated as an insult. You don't, in casual talk, pat somebody on the back in that country. So there's a lot of cultural issues which a leader has to be mindful of. So do you try to avoid diversity, or do you try to embrace diversity? So that's the leadership role. And moving from here to be Humble is a big word, but to see that I'm not here to try to change things. I'm here to try to see what I can contribute to facilitating the change. So that is two different paradigms in terms of management and leadership. What we often understand is only the management model, where you plan, you organize the staff, you invest in goods, you keep emotional distance. If you have to be a good manager, keep away from people. Don't deal with people. You just have to get the job done. This is what you are. And somebody comes to you, sir, my wife is sick, my child is sick, I got it. The moment you lend your ear, you won't have the ear left. Right? You'll have to substitute that ear with something else. Right? So you have to keep that distance and maintain stability. That's what managers do. Otherwise, you can't get the job done. But if you have to be a leader, the whole story is completely the opposite. Your job is not planning, budgeting. Your job is vision building and sharing. Alignment, bringing in a cultural shift rather than getting the job done. Instead of investing in goods, you're investing in people. The leader's role is to invest in people, get them on board, make sure they're all in the same team spirit. Connecting with people with a heart, not just with a brain. You have to empathize. There's a lot to do with empathy rather than sympathy. The manager would give you sympathy. I'm sorry that, and you can see it. It's like a wall. You've hit a wall. Oh, I'm very sorry that your child is sick. Get on with the bloody job. Right? So that's what it is. There's a story of Abdul Kalam when they were into one of those very critical mission mode where all the staff had to be in the office and you can't leave and go and come back. So there was one guy who wanted to leave and he met with Abdul Kalam. I have to leave. What is your problem? Problem is, today is my son's birthday. So I have to go get the cake and do whatever it is. Please continue with the job. Told him to continue with the job. He himself went, got the cake, took it to the house, made sure that the boy's birthday was celebrated. So now that is something that you could do, but for that you have to have a heart. The manager would just say, get on with the job. That's the rule. And then he does his job or he goes home, but you're stuck with the job. If you're from academic institutions, one classic such scenario is your standard accreditation rules. You have the accreditation committee coming and then that's tab tak kya kiya doesn't matter, but that is when the work really starts. And then it's night outs, fabricating documents and then fabricating scenarios and fabricating vision. I don't know, how would you fabricate a vision overnight? So, ये सब करना पड़ता है. So, and then the worst part of it is everybody has to be there in the office and do it. Vision, anyway, fabrication, go home and do it. What is your problem? No, it has to be there. And God forbid, if your family member happens to be sick, what do? That's it. So the outcome that we are really looking at is creating change and managing change, organization development rather than just maintaining some stability. One thing we have to be mindful in this is this idea of derailment. We're moving on with our job, but suddenly we find that now I'm not able to perform, or I'm somehow finding myself like you have a train derail out of the track. What is that happening? So 5 fatal flaws that we could get into. One is performance problem. Somehow performance is not happening. I'm trying my best, but performance is not coming. I'm failing to meet the organization requirement. Problem with relationships. I have a set of people that I'm leading that either are not listening to me, or I don't know how to get along with them, or things are becoming tough. Difficulty changing. I was used to one kind, but now the whole scenario is suddenly you're supposed to do generative AI, you're supposed to do OER. All along CTTC was picking the CTTC example. We were a manufacturing unit, we are doing CNC, suddenly we are doing AI. So I have a tough time changing. Difficulty. Now I need a team of AI guys. Oh, the worst combination is mechanical CSC, computer science. My God, it's really painful. And trust me, I got that job. When I was in Singapore, I did 2 years of postdoctoral research at NUS, and after that, I moved over to Nanyang Technological University. So I was employed at the Center for Artificial Intelligence, Center for CAIS, it was called, systems at that time, in the School of Computer Engineering, because they had a project on machine learning in product development with the Singapore Institute of Technology. That was also based in Nanyang Technological University, and it was a project from Philips. And they wanted to do AI in product costing. How do I predict the product cost, and how do I predict the lead time for product, what do you call that, delivery using AI? This was way back in 2004. So we're talking AI and generative AI way back. Purani kahani hai, nayi baat nahi. So that was my job. Why did they pick me? I was a hardcore machine tool guy. My research was on thermal error compensation in machine tool, CNC machine. But I had used Bayesian networks, support vector machines, that time, 2000 to 2003, when I did my PhD. So they found that this guy is interesting fellow. ये थोड़ा ये भी बोल लेता है, हिंदी भी बोल लेता है, अंग्रेजी भी बोल लेता है, लगा क्योंकि हिंदी वाले को अंग्रेजी नहीं आती, अंग्रेजी वाले को हिंदी नहीं आती. So this fellow is the interpreter. So I basically was doing the interpreting job between this team and that team. You can't see eye to eye. These are two very opposite ends of the spectrum. So imagine you have to lead a team like that. It's coming. Ritu Maiti is asking for it. Anyway, and too narrow management experience. Sorry, I keep using your name with your permission. Anyway, too narrow management experience. I'm not used to this. I'm not used to dealing with this. But so 5 fatal flaws that can really derail our career completely. So that's something for us to watch out for. Our leaders, born or made, there's been a survey which says they're either born or made, but some say both. It's an art and a science. There is definitely science to leadership. It's not just out of the hat. Abraham Lincoln is the textbook example on leadership. Textbook example. It's not that, okay, he was born, kya kare? If you're born that way, you're born, otherwise you can't do. There is a science to it, which all of us can learn. But then there's a lot of art involved in getting that science on the ground. Okay, so there's two things to it. So we'll skip all this. Very interesting thing here. By definition, when we try to lead, there's a lot of change, and change is something we all dislike. We abhor it to the core. We do not like change of any kind, for the simple reason that change produces value tension. I have a bunch of values, and that value need not be like Mahatma Gandhi type of values. Values just as in that this is the way I see things, and somebody else sees things some other way. It creates a very serious value tension, so I can't change. Okay. So very serious problem. I have difficulty adapting, and then I kind of end up coming up with some coping strategy, somehow manage. Just get along with it. No real change. Okay. So with this kind of a mindset, when we try to do change, there's a lot of problems. The change fails. But by default, we said a leader is a change manager. You have to manage change. So you try to come up with some change idea, it doesn't suit reality, you don't have the necessary experience, you try to come up with a solution which was not really a solution, it was just a quick fix method. Quick, stuck there for the moment, small pressure, it breaks again. So you're only coming up with Feviquicks, and obviously the last one is very important, lot of resistance for change. So anybody tries to change anything, try it, then you'll see the fun. So anyway, we can skip these. There's a lot of content here, so I'm just trying to. When do we have to close? 5. Okay, so 1 hour. Okay, so we'll skip this part. Here is another interesting example. So I'll have many of these kind of. There are about 10 in all. So I'll make sure I cover these, if not that story. Vineet Nair, somebody to look at. He was CEO of HCL Computers way back. In HCL, which was started by Shiv Nadar, was really doing bad thanks to Infosys, TCS, and the likes of all of those. So he was brought in. He was at that time CEO of HCL Comet, one of the subsidiary companies. And he introduced this very interesting thing. There's a book, Employees First, Customer Second. If you have any kind of idea of industry, which I'm sure many of you have, or if you've worked in industry, you never ever say customer second. It is anathema, it is deadly poison, it is an insult, you call it whatever you want. Customer is never second. You have to always say customer is first, customer is the king, customer is whatever. But he was bold enough not just to say it, write a book on it. There's a Harvard case study on Vineet Nair for this particular thing, calling employees first. Employees first, you should never say that. Even if you say customer second, employees ko first mat kahiye. Any organization, employee is the doormat. Wow, first time, thank you. First time respond. अभी तक सब बैठे हैं, क्या दिमाग चाट रहा है, बीच बीच में क्वेश्चन भी दे रहा है, आंसर लिखो. ये बोल दिया, two madams are really jumping out of their chair. Honestly, employees are the doormat. This is something I'm trying to do in my organization. Exactly what I got it from here. I wrote a vision document when I took over as principal the last 1 year. And my strategy is faculty centric administration and student centric learning environment. All institutions everywhere are locked on the student. Why are and student is the king, student को प्रणाम करना है, वो कुछ भी करे, you have to eat it, and the faculty is or employee is treated as dirt. You can abuse them, you can tell them whatever you want, you can overwork them, you can underpay them, you can move them around, you can beat them up. जो मुंह में आए गाली दो is okay, but the student you have to be extremely careful. You have to put on your best dress, and then student or customer. So what he said, that's not what I'll share a short video of speaking himself. When he says customer first and employees first, customer second. So he came up with these 4 things, which I coined it into an easy to remember phrase called STAR. First thing, let us do a self-awareness. Let us look at us as an organization or as an individual and see where we are. What am I? Look at that. And secondly, be transparent about it. This is what our organization is. This is where we have problems. This is where, similar to the lean idea of bring the problems out. This is where we are stuck. This is what is not right in an organization. This particular person is not behaving or working the way he should be. Let us be transparent. And then the third one is bring in accountability to the people that are doing their respective roles. A lot of times there is no accountability in the staff. We can do. So there is, it's not that everything is happening unfair. If we are being treated like a doormat, कुछ तो बनता है. एक हाथ से तो ताली नहीं बजती. Something is happening on the other side. Are we also being accountable? There is a problem. So let us look at that and then empower people to take that responsibility. So that is what he did, because he tried to look at what is really happening with HCL. Why are we stuck? And what he found is it is the employee that is the critical person in my organization, because he is the interface with the customer, he or she. And if that person is not doing the job or not being effective, I lose my customer. So rather than focusing on the customer and doing so many other things, my focus is to go into the employee. So look at now any organization, it is the employee that is the critical member there, because they may not directly be facing a customer, but they are the ones who are bringing value to the organization. The value zone is in the activities that they are involved in. And if you don't pay attention to that, you are not producing value as an organization. Obviously, you will not produce value to the customer. So the idea of customer being second is not just that, forget about the customer. You are trying to bring value to the customer, and the value gets generated in the employee. So it's very, very critical to really have your entire administrative model focused roundly, squarely, and exclusively on the employees. Yes, infrastructure matters, equipment, facilities matter, but that they're in it. You just because you have everything, Ford had everything. But you know, where they are today. Whereas Toyota did not have anything, but they had one thing. They had this whole idea of employee involvement. So they used to have Kaizen circles, what they call continuous improvement, small group activity. Make sure that the employee is fully involved, because employee is the permanent element. Toyota had that model where once you get employed, you're there permanent. Right? So you can't do away with them. So now that you are a permanent member, which is what is true for all of our cases, you are permanently a part of that unit. Are the employees involved? It has to come from here. So we'll look at this in his own words.
Beneath Nair, turning traditional corporate thinking on its head, putting employees first and customers second. Thanks for joining us. Why employees first and why customers second? That sounds a bit controversial. I'm a customer. I want to be first.
So, point of inflection comes in most companies, like when they ask 3 or 4 fundamental questions. The first fundamental question is, what is the business they are in? And the answer to that is to create value for the customers. The question two is that where is the value for the customers being created? And the answer to that question is in the interface of the employees, your employees and the customers. So that's the value zone. And if that's the value zone, then the third question is that what is the core business of the company, which is to maximize the value in the value zone? And fourth, how do you do it? By infusing, encouraging, empowering the employees in the value zone to create the value which you want to create. And therefore, the obvious answer to the question of how do you maximize the value in the value zone and grow and make profits is by treating your employees who are in the value zone first. And in that, and customers second, because that's the only way customers will come first.
So I'm stopping this video here. So very interesting point which you may want to take home. So another couple of questions. So what if you were to head an organization or lead a team? How would you look at implementing this whole idea of employees first, customer second? If so, where would you start? So you can make a note of these. Yeah, for yourself, if you were either part of an organization that leads a team or heading the organization, whatever it may be, none of these, we can do one thing. I'll run through this. If we have time, we'll start a discussion at the end. These are for questions for yourself to, just so that it doesn't end with this section here. There's something you could take home from here. Another interesting thing, okay, now we understand what is leadership, that's all fine. So, but then we are faced with this dilemma, a standard dilemma. There's been a lot of research on leadership, many different, a couple of universities, the tech, they have done studies on leadership, and they've come up with this idea of a leadership grid, which on the one hand has concern for results and on the other side concern for persons. So this is the conflict or the dilemma that leadership faces, that do you focus on results or do you focus on people? Concern for results means, I have to produce an outcome, I have to make sure that the company's goals are met, is it being met or not? Concern for people is what is happening to my team, either in the process or, where is my focus, with the team or with the results? Are these two most important? Obviously, both of them are important. If you have an organization that doesn't produce any results, there won't be an organization. If you can't have an organization, then you don't have people. And if you don't focus on people, you still don't have an organization. But then they're XY quadrant. Okay. So on the one side, there is concern for results, and on the other side. So look at the bottommost quadrant where you're very low on concern for results, you're very low on concern for people, then of course there's no leadership there at all. It just comes along. Whereas on the other extreme end, you have a compliance-based management. Everything is only result-oriented. I don't give a damn what happens to the people. It's purely result. So that has to be a very highly authoritarian kind of regime. On the other side, you have, let's say, don't worry about the results. It's like our, country club. I'm sure you have clubs here, golf club, this club, that club. Be a member, paisa no, kuch bhi kar lo. Very high on people. Make sure that the people who attend the golf club, their drinks are provided, air-conditioned lounge is there, and there's a caddy to carry the golf. People-centric. What result do you produce? How many of them end up in the Olympics? Don't care. So what we need is what is called as the high leadership, where we're both. But this is a very big dilemma. And when you people or when you are in an organization, you will be caught with this. You will be caught with it. At one point of time or the other, do you take focus on the result or do people matter to you? So to give another example on that is this example of Colonel Dowdy, who was a US Marine colonel in the war in Iraq, 2003. So he was the regimental commander. Regimental commander is a big thing. 6,000 US Marines was under his command, and he was tasked with getting Baghdad in the fastest possible way. And his commanding officer was General James Mattis, very big time general. He was, I think, later on also Secretary of Defense, if I'm not mistaken. And he was the one who came up with the entire plan of how to get to Baghdad in the shortest and fastest possible way. And he was leading this regiment of 6,000 Marines. And on the way to Baghdad, there was a place called Al-Kut, where they were not expecting resistance there. They thought the entire fighting resistance would come from Baghdad. But interestingly, Baghdad capitulated pretty easily, but the resistance came a lot from the, welcome break. That's very important. I was just wanting to ask, there should be something that comes to the participants, then digesting this is easier. उसमें एकदम मिर्च तो है ना, मिर्च नहीं है, नहीं मिर्च लगा लीजिए, डाइजेशन अच्छा होगा. So they were having to get that. So he was stuck to that. And now what he did was choose the safety of his men rather than getting the mission done. The consequence, he was probably the only officer who was relieved of command. Being relieved of command, being a regimental commander is a very, very big thing. Where you're stripped of your command, you're asked to surrender your sidearm. Now that's even worse. He was even asked to, every officer has a sidearm. He was asked to empty his sidearm. That's really, really bad. Because, just to make sure that you didn't go and shoot yourself. So he was, brought down to that level. Empty your sidearm, walk off, you're relieved of command. For what? He did not violate any rules. It was not that he did something wrong. It was not that he, disobeyed the order of the commander. It was just that his approach was not good enough for General Mattis. Because General Mattis is a war monk, bachelor, dedicated to warfare, and his whole idea of what he called maneuver warfare, somehow or the other get to the target, whatever the cost. Whatever the cost. This man has 6,000 Marines under him, and he was a people-centered man. This guy was a guy like, in Baghdad, Iraq is pretty hot, the desert climate. He would refuse an air conditioner because as a commanding officer, he was entitled to an air conditioner because his, Jawans would not have it. They don't have it, I don't have it. So that was the kind of guy. He would hold party in his house for the enlisted men and the officers alike. Calling in enlisted men to your party as an officer is another big deal in the army. You don't mix these two breed of people. Right? So that was the kind of guy. So he could not forego the safety of his people for the sake of results. Now this looks very nice to hear a good story sitting here. Samosa bhi hai, garam chai bhi aayega. तो बैठे बैठे AC room में तो अच्छा लगता है. But how does it feel like if you are Colonel Dowdy? I just had a short video to show this. Very interesting movie that was taken, The Long Road Home. I think it'll be good if you watched it. That's great. If not, quick look on this. Just to give you a feel of what it feels like, command your army. This is not based on that particular incident, but a similar incident which I thought would be good for us to see. This was another incident that happened in Iraq, southern city, where there was an ambush of a group of US Marines. This transports us to that scenario. This is a real incident dramatized by National Geographic. Yes. Imagine a scenario as commanding officer, you have to take a group of Marines into an alleyway, into a road where you know there are armed fighters around. You can't see them. This situation dramatizes that. Good. Thank you. Thank you. No, no, good. Thank you. So this is the kind of scenario that a commanding officer has to face. And these are not men that just meet for 5 minutes a day and then you walk away. You live with them, you eat with them. That is your family. And that is the family that you have to take through that road, which is not going to happen so easily because you are facing that resistance on the ground. So in the army, the commanding officer on the ground takes the decision, even though there is a overall directive from the general. But it was not good enough for General Mattis. He wouldn't have it. His job was whatever it takes, get it done. So what would we do? That's that's a question for us. We may not again have to face this kind of a situation where we are facing AK-47. AK-47 bullet taking is not easy. It's not like that small .22 thing. It will run right through the person. So taking that is not easy. What would be our approach? So we may not have that kind of a very emphatic situation. Our situations would be very, very small. Would be very small, but in effect the same. So would we choose man over mission? A target to meet, we have to get this turnover around, or we have this to achieve. But then I have a team of people. Would I focus more on the people that I'm working with or getting my job done, whatever the cost? The answer is not easy. And how do you handle these consequences? And the consequence of not taking that approach, he lost his command. And that's a big disgrace in the army for doing nothing wrong. And then a year later, he retired from the army. And his response at the end, when he was later asked, what would you do? He said, at least I don't have a butcher bill to pay. I was not the cause for so many. So there are people like that. So if you were in that position, what would you choose? So that's another introspection. So that brings us to the point of how we need to develop ourselves as a leader. So what I've talked about so far is given a few basic points on how the thinking pattern has to change. We looked at what is leadership, the need for leadership, and the dilemma faced by a leader. Now, the rest of this talk is about how do I get there? Individually, what should I do? So a lot of it has to do with our own mind and emotion and moving there. So one of the things we will require is, we'll quickly run through these. Again, there's a lot of content here. I'll focus more on those case study examples. Self-awareness, looking at our own personality traits, our own emotions, values, attitudes, perceptions. Careful about blind spots. There's a lot of blind spots that we have. We don't know that we are stuck on a particular point. When you face a situation, that is when these blind spots show to you that you're unable to see in that direction. Very critical for a leader to be very mindful of these blind spots. And that can only happen when you are doing that self-awareness exercise on a regular basis. Otherwise, you are living with blind spots and you don't know that those blind spots are the things that are causing you trouble. You think somebody else out there is causing the trouble. It is my own blind spot. I am blind to certain something. What is that I am blind to? I am blind to the fact that I find it hard to change. That's one of my blind spots. I find I have trouble changing, but I'm blind to the fact that I have trouble changing. I think I don't even know that I have trouble changing. That is a serious problem. I know that I have trouble changing, half the job done. So particularly damaging blind spot, displaying aggressiveness. You don't know that you're being aggressive. You don't know that you're being overbearing, confrontational style. Another blind spot is being too nice. Sometimes, leadership, people want to be nice leader. Everybody will say, very good things about you. That also could be a blind spot. Okay. So then they've identified these. A lot of studies have happened on this. These are more psychology-based domains. So there's lots of studies that people do. So they've identified big five, what they call as the big five personality traits: extroversion, agreeableness, conscientiousness, emotional stability, and open to experience. Extrovert. These are big five personalities required for how do I more with people, not be stuck with myself. Agreeableness, to what degree that I can go in dealing with others to accommodate them. Being conscientious, I have a set of values or principles, and am I being mindful of that? Open to experience, am I ready to change my viewpoint? Am I ready to experience new things, or am I stuck with my own old? And of course, emotional stability, how well I can handle that. We'll skip these. Another thing as leaders we have to do in building, so we are trying to look at what is it that I need to do as a leader to build myself. Obviously, the domain of act or the area of work is my own mental thought process and the emotional content that I have to deal with. So in doing that, the problem is I have to deal with different personality types. It is not just me alone that I have to deal with. I have to deal with so many other people, and each of them is a different personality type. So life can be very interesting, or it can be very exasperating, depending on which side of the E you are, excruciation or ecstasy. Depending on which half you are, it could be. So I find it always beneficial to look at it from the interesting side. Let there be varieties of people. Gives you an opportunity to work out something new. But it can be very frustrating, especially if you have to get job done by that so-called person of variety. Nothing moves. So Abraham Lincoln did something very interesting. When he became the president, he made sure that people who had ambitions to be the president themselves were in his cabinet. He deliberately picked them, knowing that they were trying to undercut him, knowing that they were trying to get the better of him because they were good in their own right. And then he made them work for the common goal. So that's pretty tough, but that is like an extreme end of working with different personalities. It's not that you are stuck with them. You are going looking for them and putting them in your team. So what do we do? Some guidelines that you could follow. Understand your own personality, very important. Treat everyone with respect. Acknowledge others' strengths, strive for very nice to say. The English is very nice. So anyway. So now, given that, another small introspection we can do is, what do you think for yourself are your blind spots? And on that big five list, where do you stand? You can make an assessment on a scale of 0 to 5 on those big five personalities. And what areas do you think you need to work on differently in dealing with this diverse group of people? Another interesting thing is this whole idea of a mental model. We all work with mental models. So and so person is of this type, so and so person is of that type. We don't know whether they are like that, but that's the model that I have. And I'm fixated on that. The moment I look at that person, that's all I can see. So now, as leaders, you can't work with a stereotyped mental model. You have to, so example of two different mental models. You may have to move from being an administrator that gives orders, going around trying to supply samosa to the participants. Okay, they're two very different aspects of a leader. But it's not just an activity. Okay, instead of doing this, I'll do that. Somebody who has a mental model that I will sit in the chair and order people around cannot do the other thing. Not because the activity is difficult, but because their mental model prevents them from doing it. So this is a very big thing that we are stuck with. The classic example is this McGregor's theory X. Right? By definition, people are lazy, they will not work, so you have to beat them. Donkey, the carrot and the stick model. Put a carrot at the end of the donkey, beat him from the back. Theory X. तो एक्स एक्सिस में जाना है तो कैरेट सामने है, इधर से मारो, you will move, you will get x axis movement. A lot of organizations do this. McGregor's theory X. A lot, even today they do it, because it's stuck on that mental model that people will not work. इनको लात पड़ेगी तभी काम करेंगे, नहीं तो नहीं करेगा. अरे उसके बारे में पता है, वो ऐसे ही है. These are standard statements that managers or team leaders would make. They will not do. So you maybe they are, but then you are stuck to the model that that's how they are, and therefore you can only come up with one option, that's the stick. Maybe they are, but why can't you have a different mental model of what you need to do? Probably not. So that's one important point. How do we develop the leader's mind? Looking at what our blind spots are, what mental model we're working with. We'll skip all this. So there are some different things: cultivate independent thinking, open-mindedness, systems thinking, personal mastery, and so on. So we'll run through all of that. Skip. Very often talked about emotional intelligence or emotional quotient. Now lots of these companies hiring, everybody says we want soft skills. They've given a new term to it, soft skills. Basically, they want everything. Fine, but academic institutions only produce one thing, and that is technical competence. He knows AI, he knows mechanical, he knows whatever. But what about that everything? Basically, what they're asking for is EQ, emotional quotient. But you don't have it in your definition in your education system, because everything is IQ. Entry is IQ, exit is IQ, in between is IQ. Everywhere is only IQ. Then where is EQ? You put it in just like your samosa is not chili samosa. बीच में एक तो मिलेगा, because that's all for flavor, just add it. So some EQ you put in. Let us have some soft skills training, how to say it, which shirt pant to wear, and you have to hold your hands like this when you talk. क्यों ऐसे? If you move your hands, is there a problem? They call it quote body language. So you try to polish up people and then send them, and that is your EQ. But that's not what it is. EQ has a lot to deal with this positive and negative emotions. Everybody deals with it. You can handle this. Bring out the positive emotions, in control the negative emotions, calls for a lot of emotional quotient. And we don't have any training program for that. The students don't have, we don't have, because we were students and that's how we came. So we don't have that training, but that's what we are expected to produce. And nobody will talk about it. That is what you're expected to produce, but nobody will talk about it. They won't give you time to work on it, but you need it. Right. So and that is very important for a leader to be, having that in control, because that is what is going to dictate what is going to happen with the team that you lead, because what you are spreads to the other people very much. Even if it's just 2 minutes or 5 minutes, what you are makes a very big impact. So rather than work on the people outside, work inside. So there's something called zone of concern and zone of influence. You are concerned about the whole world, but all you can do is influence yourself. You are better, the world is better. It's like a crystal of potassium permanganate, highly concentrated, put it in water, everything becomes blue. The water does nothing, probably would even maybe resisting the color change. But potassium permanganate is so strong that it diffuses blue. So that is what is the impact of a leader, and how critical it is that emotions. There have been another study on leaders who are better at handling emotions that produces more money. So even from a money perspective or in a performance perspective, still that also matters. Okay. So more things here. We'll skip and go to that. One very important thing before we get to that is fear in organization. I'm sure again everybody sitting here can very much relate to it. Organizations run on fear. Trump has already created that fear psychosis. No, he's already even listed out all those in government, in the Department of Defense, I guess, or whatever, who are going to be sacked upfront. So people are no, we are going to, what do you call that, deport illegal immigrants. So already that group is worried. So organizations run on fear psychosis. Create that fear. You do this, okay. If you don't do this, dash. And interestingly, it seems to work. You can run people on fear. You can drive them based on fear. But then there's a problem. Of course, why is it that fear works? Because we are afraid of failure. We're afraid of change. Afraid of personal loss, being judged, whatever. Fear of the boss, of course, big time. Very hard to find an organization where the employee is not afraid of his boss. It's very interesting. So because of fear, you try to avoid, weakens trust and all that kind of thing. But if you look at it, look at the left side, a lot of organizations will be that caution and secrecy. सब कुछ छुपा छुपा रहता है. जो मैं करूंगा उसको नहीं बोलूंगा, जो वो करेगा मेरे को नहीं बोलेगा. You have to work like that because that's how fear runs. Blaming and attacking. Put the blame on the other person. Start by attacking. Attack is the best form of defense. We know that from martial arts. So attack. Before he can say something, say that tum ye ho, tum wo, then he's on the back foot already. Okay. Excessive control, critical things get sidelined, and so on. Whereas what we really need, love-driven indicator is what this person calls it, but that's a very big term. But a non-fear based organization is completely different. One of the big things that you'll find different is transparency. Transparency and authenticity, where people are doing what they are. If you can have an organization, if you can have a team that is working with you, where every member can be what he or she is, you have done a great deal. As a team leader, as a person directing that group or running that organization, if the employees that are there with you can be who they are and not try to be something in front of you, you have done a tremendous amount of things without even your knowing it, because it cannot happen in a fear-based organization. You have to project something else than what you are. Expect others to do great and so on. So to highlight this, we have this incident, 1985, 77. The Tenerife air disaster, one of the biggest, not one, biggest air crash, air accident that happened in the world. 585 people, I think, who lost their lives, 83 people. It was a collision of two 747 aircraft. You can imagine the kind of catastrophe that will be. The Boeing carries 300 odd people, and two of them colliding on the runway. Down. It's an amazing thing. There's a big. All of these videos that I picked are something you can Google up. They're very, very interesting, very, very beautiful lessons that we can learn from that. And one of the most critical reasons for that was this whole fear psychosis. So I'll play that video just to give you that flavor. So there were two aircrafts. One was the KLM and the other was the Pan Am. There was a bomb threat in the main airport, so they had to divert aircraft to another airport in Tenerife, the Los Rodeos airport. That was a very small airport, one runway, not suited for these big aircraft. So there were many aircrafts that were lined up there because they didn't have space and because the main airport was shut down. And one by one, they were taking off. So now what happened was there were two 747s lined up one behind the other. This is the KLM cockpit.
Yeah, for the passenger to get back, we might as well take them to fuel. No, let's do that again, though. It's less expensive though, right? Yeah, exactly. It's enough to. There might be many planes moving fuel at Las Palmas. Who knows? We'll be in a hole. The Gander Sun goes down again. While I'm sitting here in this seat, I make the decision.
This was the environment in the KLM cockpit. 747s lined up for takeoff. The one in the front is the KLM, and they choose to take on fuel. Imagine a fully loaded aircraft trying to take off, full tank. This is the other cockpit where they were trying to more understand what the situation was. We'll quickly move forward.
Is equipped to deal with it. It has no ground radar, so the controllers can see where the planes are. There are no runway satellites working either. Visibility is on the borderline of this safe. In fact, as far as the Pan Am is concerned, it's below the legal limit, so no aircraft can take off. Get it out there. I'm just surprised there's no ground this. How are they able to get it down? But the Dutch are working to a different set of rules. The scene is all set for a disaster. What will actually trigger it?
Passing to the runway. Third to the left, okay. Third to the left. Good one, sir. 1, 2, 3, third one.
Keep acting on 4, because taxiway number 4 was the one that had 45 degrees, and it was easy for the 747 to access it. Whether they should have taken the third or fourth exit became largely irrelevant anyway, because it became clear that Captain Van Zanten had made one of the most elementary mistakes a pilot can make. He'd taken off without permission.
We have 700 meters visibility here now. Wait a minute. We don't have agency clearance. I know that. Go ahead. KLM 4805 is not ready for takeoff. We're waiting for agency clearance. KLM 4805, objection the modification.
KLM is given its ATC clearance, which is simply the route it must follow after takeoff. Now, it must wait for permission to take off.
Roger, sir, we're cleared to the Papa Beacon, flight level 90, right side out, 040, until intercepting with 325, and we're never going.
But why didn't his crew stop him?
It's very difficult for a co-pilot or engineer to tell the captain, hey, we can do something.
Tenerife exposed the problem of the non-existing commercial air traffic. The pilot was regarded himself as God.
The captain is always right. He's never wrong.
No junior officer was ever going to contradict the airline's top pilot, the man who'd given him his license. Captain Van Zanten, highly stressed, knowing that he has to take off or abandon the flight. His crew, aware that he's done wrong, frightened to tell him. Disaster is now inevitable. It blames the accident on Captain Van Zanten's decision to take off without permission.
So what drives people like Captain Van Zanten to behave like that? What would we do if we are part of that cockpit? And what would you do if you were in that control tower trying to manage this? Most of us face these situations where, like they said, the captain is always right, the boss is always right. And we hesitate to speak up. Sometimes the consequences can be very terrible. So we'll skip all this. We don't have time. Just quickly run to. So where do we get that courage from? So we need a lot of courage, both as leaders and as followers. There's not too much of a distinction between leadership and followership. That is another topic that I had, but we won't get there. On what is the difference between a leader and a follower? Basically, the qualities required are the same. But then, as a follower, you are trying to follow orders given by somebody else. So you have to do two things. One is manage the people that you have to manage, and you also have to manage up. It's called managing up. You have to manage your boss. By definition, bosses are always sitting up. So sitting also up, not just in positions up. So you have to manage up. And can an employee manage up? Absolutely can. And in fact, not just manage, but make sure that you get your way. Very interesting. Maybe we won't get to those ones, but that is possible. But one of the things that will be required is a lot of courage. And that is easier said than done, to have that courage to manage up. One of the sources for courage as a follower is the fact that I am good at my job. So that's a source of strength. We don't think much about it, but if I am really good at my work, then I have a positive influence on my commanding unit, there upon them, because I can't be substituted so easily. So we don't look at it from that perspective. Second is that I have a big network that I can leverage on, and I can get things to move. It's not to say that I'm trying to do one-upmanship. See, I got something and I'll leverage that to blackmail you. It's not at all a blackmail idea. It is about sources of strength. You have to have courage. I have to have a source of strength. Of course, the most ground level is the values that I stand on, and irrespective of whether or not I have any other thing or not, I hold on to it. But there are also other things that we can build. I can build a network that is needed for my job, make myself, nobody is indispensable, but a good degree, make myself indispensable. Because if I go, then the network goes with me. If I go, then the skill and ability that I have is something which is a loss to the organization. So these are sources by which even a follower can have the courage and strength to manage up. And a lot of decisions with the managers can be got your way. Can be got your way exactly the way you want. It's not just, compromise. You can get it your own way, but it will require a lot of effort. So that is something critical, which will, and I think we'll stop with this. Finally, we will have to end up with this whole idea of whistleblowing, where you will have to exhibit courage to such a degree that you have to call out things that are not good in the interest of the organization, but apparently going against the line of authority. That's a very, very big task, a very big call, because the consequences can be anything. And I won't have time to play those videos, but cases are of this. Roger Bourgelat, who was the flight engineer, who was the design engineer of the Challenger space shuttle that exploded in space. We know that 1986, the Challenger space shuttle disaster. This man was the engineer who predicted that that is going to happen based on studies that he had done, that if the launch happens below a critical temperature, the effect of the cold on the space shuttle will be such that it will lead to a disaster. He said it. Nobody listened to him because, pressures of delivery, pressures of meeting the targets, said that no. A very classic statement that was made during that time: take off your engineer's hat and put on the manager's hat. So that was a statement that they made, which became a big time. Later in life, this man went around universities talking on ethics and whistleblowing. He lost his job. He became a psychological wreck because he saw firsthand, and he was watching the live streaming of the videos, 7 astronauts being blown to pieces. And one of them was a lady, Krista McAuliffe, who was the first person to go, first teacher, she was a teacher, who was planning to be put on space. And her parents are standing watching that. So that's the video of that. You can go through. Imagine the father and mother standing and watching the liftoff, and 70 seconds into the liftoff, this shuttle goes in space, and this lady is gone. And this man knew it. He said it's going to happen. Stop the launch. We shouldn't launch. They didn't listen. All the way from NASA, they didn't listen. And then he quit the job, went around, made it his business to call out this. Of course, nobody listens. Another example is of Michael Woodford, much less heard of. He was CEO of Olympus Corporation. We know Olympus is a camera manufacturer, but they're more a medical device manufacturer. And he found certain big financial frauds happening in his company, which was being driven by the owner himself. They had identified 3 tiny companies and they were siphoning off money to those companies or buying those companies which are not worth that much. So he called it out. He was the first Englishman to be the CEO or president of a Japanese company. That's very interesting. They won't put any English guy to a Japanese company. But he was, and then he honored this and he called it out. They kicked him out of the company. They removed him from the board. He had to literally run for his life from Japan to the UK. So questions are, would we take that risk to whistleblow? Would we have that courage? Or even, let's say something is not just monetarily wrong, something is ethically very, very wrong. Would we be ready to stand up? That's a question. So I'll end with this last thing, which is very interesting. I thought of covering all this, but anyway, we don't have time. This is a book, very interesting book. Please take time to read it, called Make Your Bed. The book is very interesting title. Admiral William McRaven was a 4-star US Navy SEAL, retired 2015-14. He was the chancellor of the University of Texas system for about 10 years. And he wrote this book. What he details out 10 life lessons that I learned from my training in the US Navy SEAL. Very, very interesting lessons. And these are the 10 lessons listed out from that book. But it's nice to hear from him. So he says, make your bed. Start off your day, make it look like a very odd title for a book. But he says, one of the first lessons that he learned from US Navy SEAL training is every day morning they would have bed inspection. And your bed has to be perfect. No, edges have to be square, the blanket has to be in line, the pillow has to be straightened out, and the instructors who are, Vietnam War veterans, they would come and inspect your bed. The minutest of detail, and if there is a problem, punishment. So what he says, the lesson I learned is Navy SEAL training is that's the first activity in your day that you do. Get that right. So that you start your day with one activity done right. And hopefully, even if your whole day, very interesting statement he makes, even if your whole day goes bad, at least you can come back to a bed that is well made. Because you have done your first activity right. And then you miss so many others. One of the interesting things is life is not always fair. So they in their SEAL training had this uniform inspection. Every day you have to line up and your uniform has to be just pristine, perfect. The buttons have to be shiny. The belt buckle has to be shiny. And these guys would be inspected head to toe. And no matter how much they try to get it right, the instructors would always find a fault. And the consequence of that fault is punishment. Obviously, everything in military is punishment. What is the punishment? You go jump into the beach, come back, roll in the sand, and the whole day you stay wet. And then do all your drill. So that's the punishment. So he says the lesson that I learned is life is never always fair. No matter how well or how much you do things right, you will still be faulted. Something that may not necessarily be wrong, but you will still be faulted. How do you take it? Do you take it and get depressed? Do you take it and see everything dark around you? Or move forward? That's one other thing, interesting story that he shares is they had part of their training was to go do surfing in the sea, which was a shark infested area. Known shark infested area, and the instructors would very elaborately detail the kinds of sharks that are there. To their knowledge, they would say that nobody has been eaten alive as far as we know. So please go there and you have to do a swim there. And they also say in case a shark happens to attack you, don't swim away, stand there. And if the shark does come to you to get a quick meal, stand up and punch him in the nose. So that's the lesson. So the lesson he learns from that is there will be a lot of bullies in life. Who will somehow or the other. Bullies can be of any kind. There are the school bullies. There are the bullies in your classroom, there are the boss bullies, there are the leader bullies, all kinds of bullies are there. So face down the bullies. The more you cover and back down, it's not easy. Imagine staring a shark in the face and punching him in the nose. It's not easy. But metaphorical as it may seem, that was live lesson for them in the US Navy SEAL training. They have to do that. It's not fantasy for us, but for them it's real life. But the lesson there is that. And finally, this never ring the bell. So they have in US Marine Corps training as well as Navy SEAL training, there's a big brass bell which is there in the center of the courtyard. And training is hell. If you are part of the SEAL group or the Marine group, you will be torn apart. But the only saving grace is the bell. You go ring the bell, immediately the life is comfortable for you. Because ring the bell means you're out of the training for good. You never come back. So if you want to stay in training, they will make life hell for you. And they keep telling you, why do you have to take this suffering? Go ring the bell. Ring the bell and everything will be nice. Ring the bell, you don't have to do the training. Ring the bell, you don't have to, worry about anything else. Just ring the bell. So his point is never ring the bell. And the same man, when he was a commander, much later in his years, they were doing this parachute diving. So one guy dived before him and he dived behind. And coincidentally, that guy opened his chute and this man went bang, hit the chute. Imagine at that speed, although parachute canopy is cloth, but hitting it at that speed, the canopy, he took his pelvis, is still tumbling, and he's trying to release his own parachute, but his parachute has got stuck in, all the ropes are stuck in his legs, broken hip, and then trying to extricate those ropes. Somehow he managed to pull the cord, chute open, he went and fell. 6 months he was completely out, almost gone. And his wife was the one who told him, no, you cannot, never ring the bell. And so these are being told not by somebody who's like sitting, we've got our samosas and coffee all done, and then it's nice to say. So just wanted to quickly end with that. So there's a commencement speech which he gives.
It will encourage you to do another task. And by the end of the day, one task completed will turn into many tasks completed. But your event will also reinforce the fact that the little things in life matter. If you can't do the little things right, you'll never be able to do the big things right. And if by chance you have a miserable day, you will come home to a bed that is made. But you made it. And a made bed gives you encouragement that tomorrow will be better. The back SEAL training are a series of long swings that must be completed. One is the night swim. Before the swim, the instructors joyfully brief the students on all the species of sharks that inhabit the waters off San Clemente. They assure you now that no student has ever been eaten by a shark. It's not that they can remember. But you are also taught that if a shark begins to circle your position, stay in your ground. Do not swim away. Do not act afraid. And if the shark, hungry for a midnight snack, darts towards you, then summons up all your strength and punch him in the snout, and he will turn and swim away. There are a lot of sharks in the world. If you hope to complete the swim, you will have to deal with them. So if you want to change the world, don't back down from the sharks. Over a few weeks of difficult training, my SEAL class, which started with 150 men, was down to just 42. There were now 6 boat crews of 7 men each. I was in the boat with the tall guys. But the best boat crew we had was made of the little guys, the Munchkin crew, we call them. No one was over 5'5". The Munchkin boat crew had 1 American Indian, 1 African American, 1 Polish American, 1 Greek American, 1 Italian American, and 2 tough kids from the Midwest. They outpaddled, outran, and outswam all the other boat crews. The big men in the other boat crews would always make good-natured fun of the tiny little flippers the Munchkins put on their tiny little feet prior to every swim. But somehow these little guys, from every corner of the nation and the world, always had the last lap, swimming faster than everyone and reaching the shore long before the rest of us. SEAL training was a great equalizer. Nothing mattered
not your will to succeed, not your color, not your ethnic background, not your education, not your social status. If you want to change the world, measure a person by the size of their heart, not by the size of their flippers. The 9th week of training is referred to as Hell Week. It is 6 days of no sleep, constant visual and mental harassment, and one special day at the mud flats. The mud flats are an area between San Diego and Tijuana where the water runs off and creates the Tijuana Sloughs, a swampy patch of terrain with a mud will engulf you. It is on Wednesday of Hell Week that you paddle out of the mud flats and spend the next 15 hours trying to survive this freezing cold, the howling wind, and the incessant pressure from the instructors. As the sun began to set that Wednesday evening, my training class, having committed some egregious infraction of the rules, was ordered into the mud. The mud consumed each man until there was nothing visible but our heads. The instructors told us we could leave the mud if only 5 men would quit. Only 5 men, just 5 men, and we could get out of the oppressive cold. Looking around the mud flat, it was apparent that some students were about to give up. It was still over 8 hours till the sun came up. 8 more hours of bone-chilling cold. The chattering teeth and shivering moans of the trainees were so loud, it was hard to hear anything. And then one voice began to echo through the night. One voice raised in song. The song was a Terrorland tune. It sung with great enthusiasm. One voice became 2, and 2 became 3, and before long, everyone in the class was singing. The instructors threatened us with more time in the mud if we kept up singing, but the singing persisted. And somehow the mud seemed a little warmer, and the wind a little tamer, and the dawn not so far away. If I have learned anything in my time traveling the world, it is the power of hope. The power of one person, a Washington, a Lincoln, King, Mandela, even the young girl from Pakistan, Malala. One person can change the world by giving people hope. So if you want to change the world, start each day with a task completed. Find someone to help you through life. Respect everyone. Know that life is not fair and you will fail often. But if you take some risks, step up when the times are the toughest, face down the bullies, lift up the downtrodden, and never ever give up. If you do these things, the next generation and the generations that follow will live in a world far better than the one we have today. And what started here will indeed have changed the world for the better.
Thank you. So you're done. Thank you very much for your patience and for kindly sitting through this afternoon session. Thank you.
Any doubts?
Hello, good evening, sir. Actually, it was so nice to hear you. Can you correlate with the incidents of IPL where Sanjeev Goenka, LSG owner, and KL Rahul kind of incident? Have you noticed it? You know about it?
I don't know what that
Okay. So let me give you some brief idea about it. Suppose there is a owner of the organizations and there are several leadership ranks actually. There may be COE to actually some sections in charge like that kind of things. But if everything is monitored by one and only one, what is the role of those mid-level leaders? How they will cope up with that kind of
Situation.
ownership situation?
So one thing is what I was mentioning, managing up. So that is itself in an art. Sometimes there's not too much you can do. Lots of organizations are like this, where one person controls everything. So now when we said if you want to change the world, do these things, it's not that the world will change so easily. But this is definitely something that I can do. I can build up myself as a change agent. That change may not happen in that organization, but somewhere else that I go may get the benefit of that. But one thing that these other people can do is, we didn't cover that topic on followership, is to see how I can become a more efficient follower. What can I do where my word and my view has to make an impact with the owner? Has to, not, so I don't have power of position, but I have personal power. There are two, what they call hard power and soft power. I don't have hard power because I don't have a position, but do I have soft power? Trust me, there is a lot that can be done, depends on, and there is no upper limit to the soft power, how far you can go. So that's the easy theoretical answer. Dangerous question. My job is only to run a session like this. Don't put me in the dark. I can't think of something immediately, but I had to face similar situation where I am in a role where I don't have any influence in how the outcomes happen. But the one thing that has kept me going is building on my own credibility. It's very critical. We don't realize in organizations how it is critical for me to build my credibility. Sorry, you have something else in mind.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm not addressing.
Another kind of question is with my mind. Actually, there are certain qualities or skills people may have and people may not have.
Okay.
But time and opportunity put them into such kind of leadership roles where they have to take decisions. And they will definitely take decisions based upon their qualities,
What-
their nature, their attitude,
Correct.
like kind of things. But I would like to know whether there are certain kind of activities or qualities that are trainable or that are inherent by nature of that person.
Very nice. That's exactly what this is. This basically is nothing short of a full 45-hour, 50-hour course. I'm trying to compress into 2 hours. So there is a lot. There is a lot of content and training. It is something that any one of us, irrespective of what gender we are or background we are, we can build, but it requires training. And we have to go through each of these in pretty detail. The first item itself is just to know these things. Once we know, then how do that was the so I was trying to add those questions there so that you could go back, and now that I know some of these things from here, can I work out an action plan? There is a lot that needs to be done, and I've been working on it for the last 25 years and still not started. So that is the degree to which we need to do. But it is trainable, yes. We can do, and I know from my own experience where I started off, I was a complete introvert. For that big five personality, trust me, none of it was available, zero. And extroversion, the number one item was an absolute zero. I was so terribly introvert that I have a sister and my mother. These are the only two people I would deal with. My mother and my sister. That's it. No talk. Even till I passed out of college, all I had was just one or two friends. Anil Kumble was my batchmate. We are from the same college, RV College, Bangalore, class of 92. I never knew that Anil Kumble existed in my college. Second year, when he got selected for the Sharjah tournament, that is when I came to know Anil Kumble. One of my friends told me, Kumble got into. Who is Kumble? I don't know who is Kumble. Azharuddin was the captain that time. They came to campus, and then Anil Kumble. After that 2 years also, I never knew. So he's just a name for me, Anil Kumble. But he was class of 92 mechanical. I was also mechanical. We had only two sections. I was B section, he was A section. So that's the beauty of how introverted a person can be. But today, I would be shivering to stand in a position like this. But it didn't come easy. There had to be a detailed training. There's a lot of training that is required. And my hope is that, that's why I wanted to give this kaleidoscopic view so you get a flavor that this is where we need to invest. We invest a lot on advances. एडवांस को छोड़ो, जो पुरानी बात है वो पहले उसको ठीक कर लेते हैं. पुराना ठीक करने के लिए बहुत है, इसीलिए ये हो रहा है.
Sir, one more, sir.
Yeah.
Please. There will be decisions, and always there will be takers of these decisions. Someone will support, someone may be against it.
Correct.
And time will decide whether we are right or we are wrong. That kind of thing that happened in that Navy SEAL commander case, some may appreciate it, some may.
Correct.
And similar situations we have also faced in Kandahar case. We have to release the terrorist
Correct.
also. But someone will appreciate, someone will not appreciate, but time will say about it. But in that case, putting you into that situation, how you will justify that action? You are taking that action or
Terrorist, okay.
no. That's still necessarily
that's it.
commandant action.
Okay.
Which side you will be taking?
You mean this last one or the?
Last one.
But there was no side in.
Commandant Iraq, Baghdad.
Acha, wo wala, the earlier one, yeah. I am a people man. I am a people man, out and out. I don't know whether, so I'm not very successful in results. Not too many results. Any day for me, the decision is very clear. Man or mission, it's man. No way around it. Man, then we'll work out mission. Not obvious, madam. जब boss अगर दिमाग से आता है तो to say that to hell with your mission is very tough. Thank you for your questions. Correct. Correct. No, that statement is what I was mentioning earlier. Coping strategy. क्या करें? Boss से तो पंगा नहीं ले सकते. Boss is always right. It's a coping strategy that we have come up with. It doesn't work like that. The way organizations need to run in India, we are still too much stuck up on this functional organization model. There's a superior, upar se niche, niche. It doesn't work like that. US, the model is very, very different. We work collaboratively, so the best comes out. Maybe from the boss, maybe from whoever it is. But the moment we dream this psyche that the boss is always right, you know, if he's always right, the corona, you're unable to do because you don't believe in it, but you have to manage it. So we really lose the employees in the organization by that method. The correct method to work with is that let us collectively figure out, of course, the boss is the boss because he has that experience. Final decision is taken by the boss. So this calls for a lot. The employees have to respect his position. It's not कि अच्छा हम सब एक ही है तो take my view. Then why am I the boss and why are you the das? There is a reason for that. So, but the boss starts thinking like that, there's a problem. Then he can't accept any good opinion. Maybe the good opinion comes from the other man. So that statement is not correct, in my opinion. The people would not agree. A lot of people would not agree. Correct. So that's where we need a discussion. Correct. Very true. Very true. So the boss cannot expect that don't ask questions, follow. He has to explain his viewpoint, and sometimes the follower, as you rightly said, may not understand that viewpoint because it comes with a lot of experience. It comes with a lot of similar situations faced. Even if he tries to explain, छोटा दिमाग उससे ज़्यादा सोच नहीं सकता है. So beyond the point, the follower has to also understand that there is something here different. So it calls for mutual respect. At the same time, the boss should not also feel that no, I don't need to learn anything because the moment a leader stops learning, he is no leader. The moment a teacher stops learning, he is no teacher. Because there is no end to learning. In fact, a teacher is a teacher because he is a better learner. So what the teacher is doing is actually learning. He apparently is on the other side trying to teach, but this message is as much needed for the speaker, or in fact, even more needed for the speaker because he's claiming to speak on it than the person who's hearing. So that viewpoint will, bring a much better work ecosystem. Obviously, in India. Oh, very, very doubtful. Very doubtful because the American system is so much influencing the Indian system in all ways. Education, although the open culture is a good thing we can take from there, but there's a lot of corrupted culture in the US, which is what is spreading too much in India. So the Indian system will be even more terrible than the US system and even more incomparably terrible with what it used to be. The Indian system has a lot of strength, which we don't realize. But because we are trying to imitate what the West is doing, ये धोबी का कुत्ता की तरह हो जाता है, ना घर का ना घाट का. So that's exactly what we are ended up with. Those fellows have the money, they have the power, and they can manage it. We neither have the money nor, we make use of the strength we have. So most likely that's where India will end up, which is a sad part. In fact, which is one of the real reasons why I am doing this. I run this course in my college as a BTech program. We have a full course on leadership. We also have a center for leadership and all-round development as part of where we train students separately. So my intent is to, just as much as we need education in AI, generative AI, AR, VR, they call it augmented reality and virtual reality. I have a different definition for that. I call it associated reality and vicarious reality. We need AR, VR, not augmented and virtual. Associated reality, which is what I've been trying to do here. Associated reality, you have those videos, you associate with those people that are there, and you experience a new reality. It is very much required. And then we need vicarious reality. Somebody shares their experience, ki mere saath ye hua hai, and you can put yourself in that person's situation and then, okay, what would happen to me? That AR VR. Like we have only this AR VR, which madam is heading or trying to coordinate the lab. If we can do that, very much needed. Then that with how India is advancing will be unbeatable. And we in India, we can do it. Not so easy with other people. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you very much for your, yes, ma'am. Roadblock for that person or for correct. ये कुछ करके दिखाएगा. Correct. के ऊपर और डाल दो. Correct. Correct. From an organization perspective, if somebody is in a leadership position, they have to be mindful of that. Yes, he has done it or she has done it, but it's coming at a cost for them. It's not easy. So while encouraging that, it's good to have somebody of that strength, so you can leverage that strength. But putting undue pressure on them and loading them is going to actually reduce their output. Like many organizations, they believe work 10 hours, 12 hours, the famous quote by Narayan Murthy, Infosys chairman, is 70 hours karo and will be successful. Sorry, you're killing the people. Number of hours doesn't mean anything. What are you? I am live example. In my company, we used to have 8:30 to 5, manufacturing company standard. 5 o'clock, my boss, his cabin was at the exit gate. 5 baje, he will be there in his cabin, no matter what else. Boss ka boss. I don't report him directly, but he's the one who sits. अच्छा, ये गया 1 दिन, 2 दिन, तीसरा दिन he's on the shop floor. And then जो 1 महीने में करना है, he'll say कल मुझे चाहिए. It is impossible to do it in 1 day. But he'll say, now what to do? His idea is तुम 5 बजे जा रहे हो, मुझे अच्छा नहीं लग रहा है. He will not tell that because officially you are right in going. Pump him work. So we came up with coping strategy. 5 बजे के बाद रुक गया, उसके बाद चाय होता है, बिस्किट होता है, सब खा ले, आराम से बैठो, थोड़ा इधर उधर चक्कर काटो, and make sure he sees you leaving at 7 o'clock. काम खत्म, he is very happy, कुछ काम नहीं बनता है. 5 o'clock to after that, whatever we did was an absolute waste of time. We never worked. We just pretended to work. So my boss, when I joined this college, he gave me a very beautiful advice, which I cherish very much. He said, तो हमारे यहाँ ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में 3 किस्म के लोग हैं. एक है गधा, जो पूरा भोज उठाता है, काम करता रहता है. दैट इज वन कैटेगरी. कुछ मिलता नहीं है, पूरा भोज उसी के ऊपर है. द सेकंड कैटेगरी इज द अरेबियन हॉर्स. अरेबियन हॉर्स इज वेरी कॉस्टली. मतलब कहीं ईद का चांद कहीं एक मिलता है, कोई उसकी सफाई करता रहता है, कुछ करता नहीं है, just he is standing there and people are taking care of. So all organizations employ these retired IIT professors, a big DST का कोई so and so. बस आते हैं, rope जमा लेते हैं and then tell us all 10 more things to do which we are already existing things we are not doing. Give us all the work and then we get paid whatever. So that is the. He said the most effective people are the in between horse. जो करता तो कुछ है नहीं लेकिन पैर मारता रहता है. So these fellows are the most effective. They appear to be working. होता नहीं है. This is the survival policy. He had his coping strategy. Survival, I'm sure. This is one lesson we will take home from today. कि ये करो. Honestly, in most organizations, this is a very good coping strategy. You appear to be working, but you don't do anything. So we are forced to come up with that kind of. But that kills the organization spirit, and leadership should understand that if you push people, this is what you'll get. Ask yourself if you're okay with that, your problem. And similarly, the follower also should stand up to the मेरे से नहीं होगा. You are dumping all these things to me. I am just an ordinary, दो पैसे का आदमी. I can't do this. On my part, I will do it. I'm not trying to cut corners, but this is all I can do. That ecosystem is what we need to build. We need to build. One of the bosses here, but I would say no. That's all. Say no very respectfully. Say no. It doesn't work. No, so collectively, why I'm doing this? In fact, I was very happy when Madam extended this invitation because I want to spread this message around that there is a way around it where it's not like it's you or me. It's not a trade-off. It is both of us. And we can do it in the best interest of both the parties. Why is the boss behaving like that? Let's ask that question also. It's always easy to make the boss as usko bhoot chadana ki that he's what. Why is the boss? Because he has his pressures. He has to deliver this. There are so many constraints that he has to deal with. So there is a problem which forces them to behave. So now, how do we collectively, employee and employer, make sure that the organization is working on a very different level? We'll request others to share. You anyway have heard a lot. So anybody else has any questions? नहीं वो बाद में share कर लेना. They'll be around. You're there again. But I hope that we can collectively make it. And we may think that what can I do? I'm just a small person, just one small employee. I'm at level 0. There are so many levels above me. Zone of concern, zone of influence. You have influence on yourself. Trust me, one person makes a difference because everybody is part of the ecosystem. If one person makes a change, the ecosystem has changed. We don't have to look for big changes. In fact, big changes don't come so easily. In fact, it may not change also because the way the world is going, big changes will never happen. You will only have pockets of serious change. And that itself is a change. So we don't have to get worried. Every one of these things, we can look at it from our perspective and go full on. And the benefit will definitely be seen in you. The benefit will be seen in who look up to you. So the impact may not happen in the organization, but the impact will happen somewhere else. There's lots of people that look up to you. And it will make a difference in them. Are they mentionable 3 things? Okay. Okay. अच्छा ये 3 आइटम सर यस सर हाँ सर अच्छा 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 हाँ तीसरी बार बोला सर Correct. Sadly, we are forced to make such, that's the beautiful term for it, coping strategy. You're forced to make these coping strategies because we are not trained. We don't know that, like I said, leadership is a science. There is a science to it because AI के लिए आप इतना बात कर रहे हैं, the biggest AI is here. The AI that is the eye that is developing the AI, उसके ऊपर कुछ नहीं है. We don't have any training, we don't have any discussion, what is to be done. So AI भी क्या होगा? What AI are we generating? The AI we are creating is only creating cybercrime problem. You have morphing videos coming up, and so generative AI is being used. The more we do it, are we benefiting the society, or are we adding, opening a Pandora's box? We don't know. So the problem is not really the AI. The problem is the eye that is dealing with the AI. तो इसका कोई ट्रेनिंग नहीं. So we thought at an academic institution level we should start somewhere. So we brought in this course. Of course, like all students, this is another course. They sit through it and please be seated, man. खड़े रहने की जरूरत नहीं. Correct. Very important question. I can share there. She said personal experience. I can share there. When I started off, the reason I shifted from Singapore to India was for teaching because I wanted to make a difference in people. Whatever little I learned, I thought, let me. So I came to India, took up teaching in coastal Andhra. North coastal Andhra has the most docile people. I come from Kerala. We are very hardcore people. I've been in Tamil Nadu, I've been in Karnataka, I've been in Andhra. So this North coastal Andhra, I was told the people are the best, very amenable. So I came with full energy. Kuch kar lete hain. We are going to teach the students and change them. And I went on, blind spot. I didn't realize that I had a blind spot. कि ऐसे होने वाला नहीं है. So I was going all out, let's train the students, like tell them this thing, that. Many years I did that and then found that कि पापड़ बेल नहीं रहा है. And then something is stuck here. And repeatedly I was getting the message कि ऐसा नहीं होगा, something else has to be done. But I was choosing to be blind to that and just keep going because it seems to be lucrative when you are trying to tell another person to do something. आसान है, ये कर लो, वो कर लो, ऐसे करने से अच्छा होता है, ऐसे करने से नहीं होगा. Then now, as principal, when before I took, I said, ये काम नहीं होने वाला है. Like I said, zone of influence. I can only do what I can do. So let me focus on, what I need to do, and that will make its impact on. So the starting point is even before we can get to others, we have a lot of work to do. After 25 years of very systematically going through this training. It's not at random that I've been systematically going through this training. I have come to this realization that I have to start working on myself. There's too many blind spots. There's too many fear areas that need to be overcome. There are too many constraints that are blocking the achievement of the goal. If I don't weed out that constraint, I don't get to the goal. When I'm blind, what do I lead another person? So that is where the work starts. And then to the degree that whatever it is that we can see, we can obviously share these, but like it happens in mechanical engineering, ours is a conduction process. If you have physical contact, some heat from a higher heat body will pass on to the lower heat. Little bit, provided there is only contact. The moment you separated convection process, उतना इधर potential difference नहीं है. Radiation, Narendra Modi comes 10 lakh. It requires tremendous amount of heat source to be able to influence that group. It looks glamorous. I'm holding a pandal meeting, 10,000, 10 lakh people are there attending. You want to change the world? I'll list out all these lessons, 10 lessons. Start by making your kuch nahi hone wala. Your bed itself is in trouble here. So then filter down. Finally, we come to conduction process, and it works. Because on a mass scale, it is very, very difficult. But like I said, you change is the world change. The one or two people that you deal with who are looking up to you, and there's lots of people who are looking up to you. We don't have to worry. We don't have to worry that ever we'll face a situation that nobody looks up to me. But what are they looking up to? is a serious question we have to answer for yourself. This if we do, it will be a changed world. It's already a changed world because even if you have not achieved it, that's why I was trying to list out some questions here. Let's take these questions and start thinking about it. It's a changed world. Now we have 20, 25 people who are thinking about it. नहीं तो कौन सोचता है? Nobody even bothers to. हाँ sir, yes sir, sir sir. बस काम खत्म. Thank you all for very enthusiastically. I didn't expect there would be questions. I thought पहले से time हो गया. क्या होने वाला. Thank you so much. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ramesh sir, for such an enlightening session. We learned a lot of things from you and we'll try to work on ourselves first, as suggested by you. Thank you so much, sir. And I would request our manager training, sir, to felicitate Ramesh.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Thank you, sir, for receiving our.
No, it's an honor that